So our first question for tonight goes, Dear Ajahn Kalyano, thanks for the insightful Dhamma talk this evening. May I know if Kombucha can be consumed for someone who is undertaking 5 precepts? I read from the internet that the ingredients consist of Kombucha is a fermented drink, so it can contain alcohol, however, only in trace amounts, etc., etc. Seeking Ajahn guidance.
There's a few ways to approach this, aren't there? Like, if you're in doubt, Ajahn Chah used to say, if you're in doubt when it comes to precepts, rules, if you're in doubt, don't do it. Don't consume it. Like, do you need to consume this kombucha, whether it's got alcohol or not? If you're in doubt and you think it may have alcohol, it may be breaking the precepts, but you don't really need it, it's not essential to your diet, to your well-being, well, just avoid it, and then you don't have to even think about it. However, if you're determined to drink it because it agrees with you, well, then you have to make that decision. If generally the government and the people selling and the people drinking it consider it as non-alcoholic, and you drink it and you don't feel drunk, it should be okay. But if you start to get tipsy, then your mindfulness is going to suffer, you won't be able to meditate so well. I wouldn't recommend. So maybe you have to see for yourself by trying it out, and if it starts to make you tipsy or affects you in some way, then I would just scrap it. But if in doubt and you really don't know, well, just give it up anyway. If you don't need it, there's so many products in the world these days, you can probably afford to avoid a few of them. You don't need them.
Sadhu Luang Por. Seems to be a bit quiet tonight. Are there any other questions? Anything at all? Okay, there's one here. So, Luang Por, when I am aware of unskillful thoughts, your advice is not to pick it up or attach to it, but the mind tends to replay these thoughts even after I drop it. Why is that so? Does it mean I am attached to those thoughts?
Yes, your mind is obviously giving importance to them. So even if you become mindful, contemplate them as unskillful, as a cause of stress, suffering, let them go. You've given importance in your mind, meaning there's some form of attachment there. So to let them go once maybe isn't enough. You need to do it over and over again. Partly because mindfulness is not fully established. We have moments of mindlessness and lack of mindfulness and distraction. So then your attachments re-establish themselves. So you have moments of clarity where you can see that thought is unskillful, drop it. You can see, it's just an impermanent state of mind. I don't need to hold on to this. You let it go. But the conditioning process isn't completely broken yet. Your mindfulness and wisdom is not fully developed. So of course it can re-emerge. So I think the Buddha said it's a bit like weed on the surface of a pond. You clear away the weed, and for a while the pond is very clear and you can see everything in the pond, and then gradually the weed comes back in and covers over the surface of the pond again. So a practitioner has to be constantly vigilant, putting forth effort, contemplating, developing mindfulness and contemplating. We just have to keep at it, because some things are very deeply ingrained in our consciousness. The attachment is deep, well established. So you have to work at it over again. Doesn't mean to say it's impossible, just you have to accept some attachments will take time, and you chip away at them. Sometimes you reflect in one way and it doesn't work, so you turn around and reflect in another way. So, maybe you've got some anguish towards another person, for example, and you try to establish a thought of goodwill, doesn't work. Maybe you come back and you start thinking about the suffering you're experiencing with this anger. Maybe that does work. You say, oh, if I hold on to my angry thought, angry feeling, I'm suffering. I'm going to let go of that. So you don't really think of the other person so much, more just the anger you're experiencing. You see the suffering of that. But other times, maybe just thinking of that person, maybe you think of that person, develop the thought of compassion. Or they behave badly, but there's reasons for it. They're ill, or they're going through a hard time, blah, blah, blah. And you, from a place of compassion, you let go of your own anger by seeing their side of the story and feeling sorry for them, even though they may be doing unpleasant things, unskillful things. You actually can counter your anger by seeing things from their point of view, perhaps. So you try different things to deal with attachments that you've seen, but you haven't yet fully abandoned. You have to try different approaches sometimes. It's the same with desire. Sometimes you have desire for something, an object, a person, you really like them, want them, or an object. You try contemplating the impermanence of that desire. Doesn't work. You try contemplating the unattractive features of that thing that you desire. It still doesn't work. Maybe contemplate the fact that it's not self. You can't have or own that thing anyway. Maybe that works. You try different aspects, reflecting on different aspects of the problem until something clicks and your mind starts to let go. Practices like that, you have to be willing to keep going, keep trying, even though you've worked on something, you let it go, and then it comes back again. It seems like you're back to square one, very frustrating. You have to accept you've got mental defilements that you've accumulated for innumerable, incalculable lifetimes. Even one lifetime, you've been greedy, angry, jealous, worried, afraid multiple times already, one lifetime. Then you multiply that by many lifetimes, it's huge amounts of attachment we built up. So we have to be willing to keep working at it. But at the same time, if you establish mindfulness, you've just got the one mind, and if you can keep your mindfulness in the present moment, your defilements can only arise in the present moment. So if your mindfulness is there to meet them, they can't establish themselves in the mind. So you just keep working at it. Eventually they're going to not come up, or they're not going to be able to stay in your mind. So don't give up. Many people have found success with this practice, found peace, found happiness. You can too.
Sadhu Luang Por. I think we may have had a raised hand just before. If so, you're welcome to ask your question now. So,
good evening, Luang Por. Thank you for your Dhamma. I was just thinking, in evolution, you mentioned just then about countless lives coming to where we are now. The sense of dukkha that we have, and how it motivates us to let go, if you like, of the world a little bit at the start, and by following the Dhamma, perhaps let go more and more. Like walking through the forest near here, looking at kangaroos. Is it just when we get to the human state that we are aware of the dukkha? And is it only after so many lifetimes, maybe as a human, that we finally say, well, it's not working? There must be more to this. It is unsatisfactory. And how do we get out of it? Where does the sense of dukkha come from? And is it part of this evolutionary process?
Well, dukkha is always there. It's inherent in existence, but whether you have the insight to see dukkha as dukkha and look for a way out depends on different conditions and factors. So like if you come across a wise teacher who points out, oh, there is dukkha, but there's also a way out, then you start looking, and you may look at dukkha in a different light. Animals experience pain and suffering, but they're not really aware of a way out of it. So they're not thinking in that sense, are they? They're just, this hurts, and they run away, or they express their pain, but they're not looking for a way out. They don't reflect on things. They can't be mindful and develop wisdom and discernment. Humans can use their intelligence to do that, but still they have to hear the Dhamma, they have to be exposed to some teachings, and then they might start to reflect on their experience and look for a way out. And if we're honest, lots of human beings are not looking for a way out of dukkha, they're just doing things that get them into more dukkha. They're not ready, perhaps. So partly it's an evolution of what we'd call right view, wisdom, understanding. And that also evolves, just as kilesas evolve and become established in the mind. Well, the good qualities in the mind can also evolve and become stronger and help you life after life. If you haven't got enlightened this life, it doesn't mean to say all your practice is wasted. You'll be able to pick it up in the future. But not everyone has faith or hears the Dhamma and has faith to practice. We just have to accept that.
Sadhu. Thank you. Thank you.
Sadhu, thank you for your question. Our next question goes, Dear Ajahn, what should we practice or how to contemplate to get rid of Sakkaya Ditthi?
Well, I would suggest to study and practice the whole of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's all working to that end. Like people often think, well, you have to practice vipassana to let go of Sakkaya Ditthi. That's true probably, but you also need sila. And practicing sila is already dealing with a lot of coarse self-view, which is what Sakkaya Ditthi is. If you're willing to keep a precept under provocation, like not to kill, not to steal, there's different temptations, provocations that come along our way, that's already letting go of the coarsest attachment to the sense of self, isn't it? So it's already working on your Sakkaya Ditthi. Listening to Dhamma is working on Sakkaya Ditthi, because if you can listen to Dhamma, bring Dhamma teachings from a good source into your mind, reflect on them, use them to guide you and to inform your practice. That's also letting go of Sakkaya Ditthi, because if your Sakkaya Ditthi, your attachment to self, ego is so strong, you're not even going to listen to anyone else, are you? You're just going to believe everything you think is right. So just listening to the Dhamma also helps to reduce Sakkaya Ditthi. Keeping precepts does. Meditating, as I've been explaining tonight, samatha vipassana meditation. As you develop samatha meditation, you're letting go of a lot of negative emotions, which are an aspect of Sakkaya Ditthi, self-view. And then Vipassana, you're developing insight into the three characteristics. So things that you take as permanent, happiness, solid self, belonging to me or I own, you're questioning and looking into that and seeing that actually they're impermanent, suffering, not self. This is what really undermines Sakkaya Ditthi. But every aspect of the practice is working towards that goal. Even the practice of dana, generosity, sharing, kindness in daily life is eroding away some of your Sakkaya Ditthi. Because if you practice generosity, it means you're thinking of other people, not just yourself. So that's taking away the coarsest kind of Sakkaya Ditthi, stinginess, possessiveness. So I would say that the whole Noble Eightfold Path is working on that, for that end of abandoning Sakkaya Ditthi. And I would say don't neglect anything. It's not just one simple technique or one special teaching that will work. It needs to be, these qualities and practices need to be developed together. It's a group effort, you might say, by many factors, or as the Buddha said, like the 37 wings of awakening, the different Bodhipakkhya Dhammas. That's a good set of different Dhamma qualities to study, at least remind yourself of, that there are actually many different factors to the path that you need to develop. And they will all help erode away Sakkaya Ditthi and see through the delusion of Sakkaya Ditthi.
Sadhu. Another question. Dear Ajahn, there are two teachers I listen to, but I am not sure if it's skillful for me to continue following them. One Ajahn told a layperson once that she should get a very specific object for a puja that he was going to do to the Buddha, claiming it would be good for the layperson's merit, although the layperson hadn't asked for it. Another monastic justified doing euthanasia to her terminally ill and old dog out of compassion. Are these behaviors in line with the Theravada Vinaya? Should one only see the good behaviors and Dhamma of Ajahns while ignoring the ones that don't feel proper? Or is it better to stop following them? Thanks for any advice.
Well, the Buddha encouraged us to get to know somebody over a period of time before we fully accept them, trust them, whether it's a teacher or just as a Dhamma friend. So short periods of time, one talk or one meeting isn't enough, is it? You need to associate with someone regularly, and then you get to know their character and their level of Dhamma, we might say, their level of understanding, and then in the case of teachers, what they're going to tell you. So try and keep an open mind, and if it's just small little things, sometimes say one small little thing that isn't so doesn't have such consequences, well, maybe that doesn't matter so much. But if they're over time, you see there may be teaching yourself or others unusual things that don't match what the Buddha said, or the feeling doesn't seem quite right. Things are not going so well. Well, these are clues or indications maybe that the teacher is not themselves yet well developed, and so you maybe shouldn't be following them too closely because maybe they're teaching you the wrong things. So generally a teacher should be teaching you the 5 precepts, which includes not killing animals. Sure, we practice compassion, of course, but generally we don't practice euthanasia or advise people to practice euthanasia of animals or people in Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, or any Buddhism. I don't know the teachers and the context and the situation you're referring to, so I can't really say right or wrong, but generally we don't encourage a direct action of killing. Usually encourage people to be patient, loving, kind. If it's animals, well, to look after the animal and let them die naturally. That's usually what I encourage people to do, and what I've seen people to do, and I've done myself, and it seems to be possible. And it seems that nowadays there's a real tendency to just rush to use euthanasia, particularly for any kind of pet or domesticated animal, if it's, or even wild animals that are come into contact with humans, often if they're injured or anything, people just put them down. And they seem to do that too easily, too quickly, I would say. What was the other part of the question?
The first part was an instance where one Ajahn told a layperson that she should get a very specific object for a puja that I believe that the Ajahn was going to do for the Buddha, claiming that it would be good for the layperson's merit.
Well, you have to look at the results of what you've done. If it's worked, can't really complain, can you? Sometimes teachers give us very good advice. Do this chant, do this meditation, and it can be really good for us. So you have to look at the results. Sometimes things don't work. Maybe the meditation object or the chant, the puja is wrong, or maybe we don't try hard enough. You have to assess your own efforts in these things as well. You can't always put it on the teacher. Again, I don't know the situation, but it's not unusual for a teacher to give a student an instruction to try doing something. That's quite normal. And then the teacher might be wishing the student well and just giving them some encouragement to try this, try that. So I wouldn't say it's absolutely right or wrong listening or reading this question, hearing this question. You have to look at the results and see how it goes for that person, whether it helps them or not. If something's not helping a student, well, a good teacher is obviously going to say, well, maybe this isn't working, let's try something different. Because their interest is for the student to progress in the Dhamma, to develop more sila, samadhi, panya, to reduce their greed, anger and delusion. So any teacher following the Buddha will be interested in that.
Sadhu. Part of that same question, I think, if I'm interpreting it correctly, I think the Ajahn asked the layperson to possibly buy an object for the monk, claiming that would be good merit for the layperson, I think.
Yeah, well, you have to look at the results. Sometimes we need to practice dana and generosity. That may be what's needed, sometimes not. You have to look at the results and the whole situation, whether it's the monk just wanting something from their own desires and attachments, or whether they're genuinely out of compassion trying to get someone to practice generosity. It could be both ways. I can't really say because I don't know the situation.
Sadhu Lungpo. Next question goes, Dear Ajahn, I have a friend who has aborted her 4th child-to-be recently due to some family circumstances. Is there anything she can do for the child to repay him or her other than sending good thoughts to the child? Thanks for your guidance.
Well, usually we encourage to make merit for the aborted fetus, the consciousness which wanted to be born and now cannot be born. So to respect that consciousness, out of compassion as well, and the wish for them to attain a good rebirth next time. So can offer Sanghadana is probably an appropriate thing. Some robes, food, other requisites to a Sangha somewhere, and dedicate the merits to the unborn fetus. And to practice metta meditation, so that can be done through chanting, meditation, and just general acts of merit dedicated to the unborn or the terminated fetus. So I would do that because, even though we didn't see a baby being born, there's still a consciousness wanting to be born that's now been frustrated. So they're going to be unhappy. If they could speak, they would say, "Don't abort me," as we all would. So, out of compassion, then make acts of merit, make acts of good karma, and dedicate it to them.
Sadhu. Are there any more questions?
Maybe that's enough for tonight. Been very nice talking to you as usual. So we wish you all well with your Dhamma practice for the next week until we meet again. Try to do at least 10 minutes meditation every day. That would be my recommendation. And if you can do more, even better.